Just as hundreds of thousands of Coloradans get ready to receive the unemployment benefits they've waited weeks for, the state warns of a different delay. Colorado's top law enforcement official tells the vaccine provider we warned you about to take down its appointment listings. We're digging into why Colorado's COVID numbers are improving so much lately. We remember a CU pioneer who paved a path for today's students. And remember this guy? 2 years later, the Coloradan who famously fought off a mountain lion tells us the one really good thing that came out of it all. Next. Let's think positive. If NASA can send a spacecraft 300 million miles to Mars, Colorado can figure out a way to get unemployment payments to hundreds of thousands of people who have been waiting since last year. Hey, use actual rocket scientists if that's what it takes. Relief is supposed to come for those folks on Saturday. That's when people should begin to start accessing their money. It's a few days earlier than the state expected, yet 8 weeks later than people needed it. Our Marshall Zellinger looks ahead to another possible delay that the state wants you to know is not their fault.
I have been an HR manager for several years.
Teresa Miller is exhausted, both literally and figuratively. She's exhausted her state unemployment benefits, putting her in phase 2 of unemployment.
I'm a very lucky person because my family is supporting me.
Teresa is among the 289,000 contacted this week by the state about the next phase. For 11 weeks worth of money Congress approved, dating back to December 27th.
The real question is what could be done best to try to avoid a gap for citizens who are suffering at this point in time.
Acting Unemployment Insurance Director Phil Speshart did not avoid the elephant in the room. Why are benefits that Congress approved in late December just being made available Saturday, February 20th?
When Congress waits until a program ends to take any action, and then we have to await additional information from U.S. dollar guidelines, that creates those gap weeks for individuals.
Here's a timeline from CDLE. CARES Act benefits expired December 26th. Congress approved an extension on December 21st, but President Trump didn't sign it until December 27th. The U.S. Department of Labor had to issue new rules based on the law. Colorado received the last of those rules on January 8th. It took the state 3 weeks to program the new unemployment system for phase 1, those with regular unemployment and people whose accounts were not yet at zero. Now, 3 weeks after that, the state is ready for phase 2. For those literally and figuratively exhausted.
I'll believe it when I see it.
Not to jump too far ahead, the state is warning of a possible gap in payments next month. Congress's extension of benefits expires March 13th. Going back to our timeline, the state needs more than a day's notice to get the payments going.
My comfort level would have been that Congress had something done this week and that it was signed by the president by Friday. I would have a comfort level there that we could probably look at rolling something out to minimize or have no gap. That hasn't happened at this point in time. Members of Congress are off this week.
For Next, I'm Marshall Zellinger.
Coming up on 750,000 people with a dose of the vaccine in our state. Just more than 748,000 now, almost 13% of the population. And more than 300,000 Coloradans, 5.8% of the population, are fully immunized. The Colorado Attorney General's office has sent a letter to VitaCare telling that home health company to take down its COVID vaccine sign-up page. It was still up the last time that we checked. Now, remember yesterday, the company told us that it was going to take the page down. The same day that we drove all over Denver and out to Fort Morgan looking for evidence that VitaCare actually had a location with which to conduct the vaccination clinics it promised. The website's still up, offering slots for shots as soon as next Friday and as far in the future as mid-May. VitaCare does not have the state's permission to provide the vaccine. Democratic Attorney General Phil Weiser's office represents the state health department in this and sent that letter warning that the state's concerned about the company continuing to offer vaccine appointments without approval for the vaccine. The letter threatens further legal action if VitaCare doesn't take the page down. Colorado's positivity rate remains positively quite low. Yesterday, 3.4% of tests came back positive. Our weekly average is 3.6%. That would suggest the virus is not nearly as widespread in the community as it's been over the past few months. We've watched positivity surge and drop off before. There are a few factors playing into it now, including vaccinations starting to show in our numbers. Here's Anusha Roy.
Infectious disease specialists are giving kudos to Coloradans being smart about COVID precautions and saying it's playing a big role in the drop in cases.
So we do the basics well.
The state has crossed the 1 million mark for first and second doses of the vaccine. Dr. Michelle Barron with UC Health said those effects are slowly showing.
If you think about this, we started vaccinating healthcare workers late December. And so, we've actually had more than a month now, and the numbers continue to go up. So I believe it is having some impact. It's not huge.
Then there are the number of people who have fallen sick.
Because of the past year, we have a substantial percentage of the population that has been infected.
Dr. Bill Berman with Denver Health said after someone gets sick, they have some natural immunity that can help cut down transmission. Health experts do believe that natural immunity eventually fades. Dr. Barron did add in saying, we don't know total how many people have been infected because not everyone was tested and when their immunity dropped off.
I've joked that all my white hair is from trying to guess what COVID's going to do.
We've also watched the number of people being tested in Colorado slow down, so we asked how that impacts positivity.
If the decrease in cases was solely due to a drop-off in testing, then you should see an increase in the percent positivity. And we're seeing the exact opposite.
But before drawing conclusions, that requires some perspective.
People aren't getting tested, then we don't know that they're positive. And so I'm not sure if that's because we just really are seeing less cases and people are not symptomatic, or people are just kind of over it.
So the last 2 days when it comes to testing have looked slightly better, so we just kind of have to watch to see how those testing numbers play out. The state also pointed out that from this weekend there was a dip in cases, but just keep in mind that some of those testing sites, they were closed because of the weather that we had. But overall, that trend of cases and that downward trend, Kyle, it's continuing.
And Anusha, as we've talked about the variants popping up in Colorado, the thought is because they're more contagious, if they really start to go, we'll see that first in what? Tests and confirmed cases?
Yeah, so basically what both doctors said is that even in just the next couple of weeks is going to be a time to kind of watch out to see how these variants play out and what happens in the numbers. It could be that soon that we see what's going on with those trends. Again, though, both the state and all of the doctors said that our best line of defense when it comes to this is going to be our COVID precautions, which, like we said, people have been doing a really good job at, and then the vaccinations as well. And they're hoping that's going to keep everything in check.
Yep, slightly new opponent, same defense. All right, thank you, Nusha. The Chief Justice of the Colorado Supreme Court is promising a change in culture in the judicial branch. Chief Justice Brian Boatwright emotionally addressed allegations of sexual harassment and judicial misconduct today. The Denver Post first broke the story about claims that a former chief of staff had been awarded a fat contract to prevent her from filing a sexual harassment lawsuit. Chief Justice Boatwright says Colorado's judiciary faces a crisis of confidence in its leadership, and this is something that affects all of its people.
This past week, I reached out to a long-term employee of the judicial branch, and I asked her how she was doing. She's normally very upbeat and positive. That day, she was very direct. She responded that for the first time in her 20-year career, she was not proud to tell people that she worked for the judicial branch. That broke my heart.
Earlier this week, the Colorado Supreme Court said that it wants the state's other government branches to pick the independent investigators who are going to look into those allegations. She got her diploma 75 years ago. Her impact at CU is still felt. Before we had to worry about catching a virus, we used to worry about catching hands from a mountain lion.
Don't turn and run away, make noise, make yourself look big, and if necessary, fight it.
We'll catch up with the Coloradan who got briefly famous when he fended off a mountain lion. Next. Here's a Colorado question for you. Would you take a run at a mountain lion to protect your pet? Yeah, I'd like to say that I would, but saying it's easy. Actually doing it like Gene Wannell did, that's another thing. Gene let his dog Sadie out in the backyard in Estes Park last week, and within minutes a mountain lion attacked her. So Gene grabbed the only weapon-looking thing he could find. It was one of those surveying yardsticks, and he charged the mountain lion with it. The mountain lion wanted no part of Gene or the stick, so it skedaddled. The dog has some cuts and bite marks, but it's healing up. Hey, that reminds me, big cats up to no good. That's one of the things that we used to talk about in the before times. This week, 2 years ago, was when we all met the one true king in the North, Travis Kaufman. Remember that name? The guy who fought off the mountain lion that attacked him while he was trail running near Fort Collins. The attack happened in early February 2019. 2 years ago on Valentine's Day, Travis spoke publicly for the first time. So buckle up, kids. We're going to take a drive down memory lane. The man, the myth, the legend, Travis Kaufman. The Coloradan who fought off a mountain lion with his bare hands turns out to be everything you would expect him to be. Athletic, outdoorsy, courageous, composed, and he's everything Colorado could ask for. He's funny, humble, thoughtful, and real.
Hey everybody, just a show of hands, who all is disappointed that I'm not in fact Chuck Norris? There was a certain point where I kind of just imagined being stuck on this hillside and eventually just having a cat gnaw at me, which is a creepy way to go.
Here's the deal, Colorado. This man cannot be allowed to pay for another drink as long as he shall live. I do not know his drink of choice. It didn't come up today. Seems like a craft beer guy, but maybe I'm just projecting. But anyway, the dude drinks free for life in this state, all right? So, how'd that work out? We actually got in touch with Travis Kaufman today. He says he has had a few beers bought for him over the last 2 years. He's also spotted his name, or just the Mountain Lion guy, written on one of those pay it forward signs at bars and breweries. It was one gift, though, that he said meant the most to him and his fiancée.
One of the venues kind of close to town offered us up a free venue for the wedding day. And it was one of those things we couldn't really turn down. And it would have been unlikely to carry over for another year. And it was super beautiful, and yeah, couldn't have really asked for like a better outcome from like the perk of the mountain lion thing.
So it's official, folks. Travis is off the market. And while he tells us he's still trail running, he does it now in groups as opposed to running solo.
Last night's storm brought 1 to 3 inches of snow across the metro area, with afternoon highs today around freezing. We'll see these numbers jump 10 degrees tomorrow, even with another storm on the way, and chance for mountain snow in about 24 hours. That storm will bring snow to Denver on Saturday afternoon, but just light accumulation expected. We'll have a few clouds early tomorrow morning, and then lots of sunshine and warmer weather on a Friday afternoon. Tonight, cold though, clear and calm, our low at 12. Tomorrow's high in the mid-40s. 40s for Saturday and Sunday, with a 40% chance of snow Saturday afternoon, less than an inch of accumulation. Clear and cool Sunday, and then look at the 50s in the extended period, close to 60 by Tuesday.
Shoveling your neighbor's walk is always kind on a day like today. Shoveling the entire track at a high school, that is a power move, but it looks like one person was doing that at West High School in Denver today. Farron spotted this from a high perch and suggested a shout out. She emailed us saying, "That's how you Colorado." She wasn't even allowed to live on campus at CU. She fought through discrimination and built the foundation for generations to come.
My mom would be very hesitant to take credit for all this, but I think that her shoulders were wider than she thinks they were.
We're honored to share the story of Zipporah Hammond next. A University of Colorado student defied segregation and racism to make history, with no role model to go ahead. Zippy Parks Hammond became that role model for minorities then and now. Our Byron Reed has the story of a trailblazer with a passion to serve others.
She was resilient.
The motivation for brothers, Stephen and Daryl Hammond,
She was able to take on things that she was passionate about.
comes from the important milestones accomplished by their mother.
She actually decided that she wanted to become a nurse probably around age 10 when she was, in grade school. And her mother passed away.
She was always in a serving, supporting, helping role, which is probably why she chose that as the area that she wanted to get into.
Zipporah Hammond was born in Denver in 1924.
Her nickname is Zippy, short for Zipporah.
And was eventually accepted into CU Boulder School of Nursing in 1941. She was the only black woman in a class of 30 women and couldn't live on campus due to segregation during World War II.
She was basically housed in a separate facility from the other nursing students, along with Japanese students. They were segregated from all the opportunities to learn with the same tools and resources that the white students had.
In 1946, Zipporah made history by becoming the first black woman to graduate with a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Colorado School of Nursing. That same year, she joined the Cadet Nurse Corps to serve her country. After the war, Zipporah worked as a surgical nurse at Colorado General Hospital in Denver.
She ultimately worked for the Colorado Medical Center for about a year until she was actually hired away by folks that were down at the Tuskegee Institute and the hospital there.
In the early 60s, she reached another milestone by being named the first black director of medical records of what now is St. Luke's Presbyterian Hospital.
My mom would be very hesitant to take credit for all this, but I think that her shoulders were wider than she thinks they were.
These brothers say their mother's legacy helped open doors for others.
She basically held up a lot of people who followed her.
By being an inspiration for black people who want to serve the public.
Her heart for serving people has been evident throughout her whole life.
For Next, I'm Byron Reed.
During all her years of service, Zippy contracted tuberculosis, and she passed away in 2011. Her sons created a memorial nursing scholarship in her name, and they're hopeful that someday she'll be inducted into the Colorado Women's Hall of Fame. The difference between the gas pedal and the brake, one of the first lessons at driving school. But what if you needed the lesson before you pulled up outside the driving school? That photo and your feedback next. It's a sign that you're in the right place, sort of. Somebody drove their SUV through the front of a driving school in Longmont, kind of between the driving school and the DMV next door. One-stop shopping, I suppose. Nobody was hurt, all right? Nobody was hurt. And it would seem that they're in exactly the right place to work out whatever issue it is that led them to install a drive-through lane where there was not one previously. If you see a sign, literal or figurative, email next@9news.com or use the hashtag HeyNext. Whole lot of feedback tonight. Carrie Richardson writes in and says that the guy that we featured earlier this week on the program, who bootstrapped his own website to scrape the pharmacy websites for vaccine appointments and put them all in one spot, Carrie Richardson says, that guy helped me get 2 sets of grandparents, 2 of them over 87 years old, vaccinated yesterday. Thank you. That's fantastic. That's great news. Kyle Gremsey writes in to say, you're a moron. That's it. The dude did not elaborate. That's difficult to work with for personal growth. Grant Blue says, I caught myself tapping my foot to your theme music. It must be good. Excellent. And Susan writes in to say, you're not funny anymore. Susan, you're wrong. I was never funny.